Hello, I'm Kristen Rowland, and I'm here to inform you about the greatest, most successful, and innovative rock band of all time, the Beatles. From the release of Love Me Do in 1962 to The Long and Winding Road in 1970, the Beatles created a music catalog that will never be equaled. First, we will look at three areas of their careers. First, Beatlemania, how the Beatles transformed the world with their new sound. Second, how with every new Beatle album, the Beatles took their fans to new directions. And third, how their music endures now and will forever. Firstly, the Beatles released Love Me Do on October 5th of 1962. In the coming year of 1963, the Beatles released 5 singles helping to create their album Beatlemania, which was coined by the Mirror, a newspaper in England. Subsequently, in a two-week period in February of 1964, the Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, which was a popular variety show where Beatlemania had now arrived in the United States. The same year, in April, the Beatles singles held the top 5 positions in the Billboard charts. This feature had never been seen before or since. The young men of America could not get their hair cut fast enough to have the Beatles' haircut. Their second American release album, Meet the Beatles, featured the 4 Beatles with what was phrased as mop-top haircuts. Secondly, record sales skyrocketed as the lads from Liverpool continued to release music, and every Beatle fan would line up at the record shop for the chance to purchase the latest release. Adding to the frenzy of Beatlemania, the Beatles released 2 movies, A Hard Day's Night in 1964 and Help in 1965. The Beatles continued to write more songs, release more singles, and created new albums. In the late 1965, the Beatles introduced a new phase into their music with their release of Rubber Soul. Their creativity changed from top 40 to a more progressive music that no one had ever heard before. This new direction led the Beatles to stop touring, which they did in August of 1966. That decision led to what most consider the production of the greatest album ever made, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Until the Beatles broke up in 1970, they continued to dazzle everyone with unmatched creativity. Thirdly, just because the Beatles broke up, their individual talents were on display for the world to see. Over the years, many bands have tried to duplicate what they have accomplished, only to fail. And the phrase, "these guys could be the next Beatles," was so overused that the disc jockeys finally gave up on the realization that the Beatles were the only one. In the 90s, the Beatles continued to redefine themselves to new audiences with the release of the Beatles anthology, introducing a whole new generation to their music. Then the release of the Beatles' one album, featuring all 4 of their #1 hits, another generation grew to appreciate their music. Then with the release of the Beatles' library to iTunes, more had availability to what they created. In conclusion, we have covered how the Beatles broke on the scene with Beatlemania in the early 60s, and discussed how their music shaped a generation and subsequent generations through the genius of their music. And with each passing year and new technology, the Beatles will be at the forefront introducing their immense music catalog to their generations, to future generations. Unlike so many other groups that have gone by the wayside, the Beatles and their music will endure forever.